The Maranello team has finally introduced their car to the world, and it goes without saying that this is definitely one of the most beautiful cars on the grid. While the design isn't particularly new and innovative, with Ferrari holding on to the old philosophy, there is one part that has drawn the attention of the rest of the grid, and that's the front wing design. The fact that Ferrari implemented an identical front wing as Mercedes, the one that was banned for 2022, and they still got the green light from the FIA, goes on to show that they've definitely found a loophole in the regulations. After a troublesome 2022 season, one that was full of strategic blunders and missed calls, Ferrari is ready to get back on top again. They've presented the car with which they plan to conquer the grid, and based on first impressions, everyone was amazed. The new cooling vents are sticking out and the narrower body is making the car look even more aesthetically pleasing. But we doubt that the reason behind these changes is of an aesthetic nature. The aerodynamic prospect of the 2022 car was something with which Ferrari didn't struggle as much as they did with the mechanical issues. But this is far from the fact that they didn't need improvements in this area as well. That is why Ferrari has tried, and successfully if we may add, to implement a front wing that Mercedes was bashed and banned for in the previous season. The Silver Arrows were the first team to come up with this design, but the FIA thought that the wing from the Brackley-based squad interfered with some of the basics of the technical regulations. Now that Ferrari appears to be using the same front wing, one has to wonder, has the FIA prepared something for the Maranello team before the season even begins? To get away with it, there must be some kind of difference in the front wing design, which Ferrari was able to interpret more thoroughly and cleverly than Mercedes. The front wing slot gap separators that were first introduced at the US GP in 2022 by Mercedes were quickly banned by the FIA, along with the rear wing design of Aston Martin, but now Ferrari has brought in their own interpretation of the rules, one that seems to be very legitimate. Let's take a short trip back in history and see why the Mercedes front wing was banned, and therefore why Ferrari's design will go on to outlive the 2023 season. The original version that appeared in Austin, implemented by the Silver Arrows, got the grid arguing over the fact that it featured 5 strakes that were fashioned in a way to help modify the airflow. Rivals were unhappy about this design because, according to Article 3.9.8 of F1's technical regulations, it directly meant that Mercedes passed the limit when it comes to using components to deliver an aero boost. The rules stated that while such slot gap separators were allowed, they were not supposed to deliver a direct aerodynamic influence. And the reason why these strakes couldn't be fitted is for primarily mechanical, structural, or measurement reasons. When talking about this matter, Mike Elliott felt like Mercedes' design did follow the rules, something to which he added, "I think there's a fuss about it, because in the regulations it talks about the primary use being for mechanical or measurement purposes, and clearly there's a secondary benefit of an aerodynamical design that's in there as well. We'll decide whether we want to argue that one or not. It's not worth a huge amount. That detail looks interesting, but it's not the big thing on the front wing." Now, a couple of months later, we're seeing a front plate in one of Mercedes' fiercest competitors that looks exactly the same as the one that Mercedes implemented in Austin, and people are looking for answers. Obviously, Ferrari found a loophole, and a dive into the regulations has explained why the Maranello team was able to keep up the design and push forward with it, while Mercedes wasn't. As part of the revised technical regulations for 2023 that were published in early December, the FIA removed the key sentence that laid down the requirement for such strakes to be primarily for mechanical, structural, or measurement reasons. What this means, put out in simpler words, as long as the slot gap separators provide a structural connection between consecutive front wing profiles and comply with strict measurement requirements, then they are now fully legal. It's a huge change in the rules, and by deleting one sentence, the FIA made a move that would have made Mercedes huge favorites for the 2022 title. Not that the Silver Arrows aren't currently one of the best teams on the grid, but in a season where they struggled a lot for pace and performance due to the porpoising issues, it would have been a nice boost for them to have such a design implemented on the W14. Now, no matter how much of an aerodynamical boost Ferrari gains from the front plate, it cannot be deemed illegal, and that is something that Ferrari is looking to bank on huge results for the 2023 season. The car has already been tested out in Italy at the Fiorano test track, and it seems like the Maranello team is already confident that they can fight their fiercest rivals, Red Bull, once the season starts on the 5th of March. Of course, one of the most important things that Ferrari would have to fix is the consistency, because the last thing they'd want to experience is a huge drop in performance after the third race of the season, something that's hindered their championship chances in 2022. Charles Leclerc spoke about the SF-23, the challenger that will have a lot of work ahead of itself, and when talking about the performance of the car during the Fiorano test track, the Monegasque added, "It feels good. I mean, the first kilometers with this new project, after doing so many kilometers in the simulator, it feels special. So, everything went smoothly. Obviously, with 2 laps, it's difficult to go into details, but I already gave my feedback once I was in the car there to the engineers to get the first feeling. The car was running well, smooth, so yeah, everything went really well." Many fans wonder why Leclerc was the one to test out the car in Fiorano and not Sainz, and you would find it funny that he won the battle with his teammate due to a coin toss. Fred Vasseur held the competition, and Leclerc was the one winning it, and due to the strict limit on running, Ferrari had to comply with F1's testing restrictions and keep the testing as minimal as possible. Apart from the new innovative front wing, one that was actually facilitated by Mercedes, and then again implemented by Ferrari, the prancing horse has a lot of other new changes as well. One of the coolest changes that we've been able to see is the cooling grille, which is probably the first thing that comes to your eye naturally with the different front plate compared to the F175. It seems like the car will be faster by around 1 second compared to its predecessor, and that is definitely something that Sainz and Leclerc are happy to hear and to witness in the 2023 season. Thanks to the new cooling design, the car will have a new way to cool down, without the need to carry multiple large pieces of bodywork around the world, which would benefit them a lot when it comes to the budget cap restrictions. The most interesting part that's added on the SF-23, apart from the 2 that we've mentioned above, is the side duct that is positioned alongside the trailing leg of the halo, with it extending the width of the chassis as it widens beside the cockpit. As of now, we wouldn't tell whether this is simply an additional cooling outlet or if it has more of an aerodynamic boost for the team, which would have been manifested by it being powered by an inlet that's been cleverly hidden away beneath the main side pod inlet. But time will tell which one of these 2 is the solution for the SF-23. And keep in mind that Ferrari also implemented changes to the main inlet, with this part seeing a revision, and further effort has been made to increase the depth of the undercut, with a lower side impact protection spars tip now being exposed and a bodywork blister being used to cover it up. But none of these are as interesting as the front plate that has been talked about massively in the past few months, and time will tell whether the FIA will come forward with their own explanation of the rules and why they suddenly decided to change that one sentence in the regulation that allowed Ferrari to implement this design. It seems like this outcome is a bit unfair for Mercedes because they are the ones that brought it to life, and now they're witnessing it being stripped away from them and rewarded to their fiercest rivals. What do you think about the loophole that Ferrari found? Do you think that it will be enough to beat Red Bull and finally reach the championship that's been missing for so long? Let us know in the comments below.